that you're here with us today. Nearly a year ago, we set out to, Juliet and I should set out to create a documentary that centers and amplifies the voices of Black autistic people. And that's because, as we know, often our stories are left out of the mainstream narrative. When you hear of autism and you see it, a lot of times it's from the white uh, male perspective. So we said, as disability justice activists and filmmakers, we wanted to create this film to really, um, again, to center the stories and the voices of Black autistic people, their families, their community. And this webinar series is just the beginning of the evolution of the documentary. So this documentary will be, coming out sometime in the future. Again, this is part of the evolution. And for accessibility purposes, I am a brown-skinned African-American woman. I have long black hair, kind of like a red lip gloss, and I'm wearing a blue tank top. And I give it to my executive producer, Juliet.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Um, for accessibility purposes, I'm a brown-skinned Black woman with curly purple hair and half ponytail, half down, wearing a African print red, yellow, red, gold, and green dress. As Tamika said, I'm Juliet Romy. I'm one of the executive producers for #Autistic Out Loud. These webinars are more than the conversations. They're about our community spaces where we can gain more deep understanding of our shared experiences, like in everything that we go through in life. We want to continue building toward equity, visibility, and justice for Black autistic individuals and their families. And before we begin tonight's webinar, I'd like to take a moment to honor the memory of Xavier Malik Jacobs, a young Black autistic man who brought immense joy and light to his family. Today would have been his 29th birthday. And as we gather to discuss issues in healthcare, it feels especially meaningful to pause and remember him. So we ask that you please keep the Jacobs family in your thoughts and prayers, and let's observe a moment of silence in Xavier's honor. Happy birthday.
Yes, thank you, Juliet, for that mentioning. We definitely want to, uplift Xavier in this space.
Yes.
So each session that you have, will see or have seen, will highlight the themes for the film. So the film, and again, this webinar series ranges from education, employment, to health equity, diagnoses, to joy, identity, building community, autistic Black joy, and resistance. You'll hear from autistic leaders, parents, scholars, and community activists, advocates also, who are shaping what inclusion and just disability justice look like.
So whether you're joining us as a self-advocate, as an ally, a parent, a professional, or someone still learning, we welcome you. Thank you for showing up and leaning in to this powerful dialogue. We invite you to listen deeply, ask questions, and share what you've learned. This is just the beginning.
And I want to just for a minute thank our program coordinator, who helped put all of this together. My friend and mentee, Charlotte Batchelor. Thank you. Also, our interpreters who are here with us today. And also, thank you to our moderator, Carlene, and panelists, Anid and Janelle. And last but not least, thank you, the audience and the attendees who is in the room with us on Zoom or who's watching us on YouTube. And thank you for being part of the Autistic Out Loud journey. So I'm going to pass it to Carlene to start us off.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Carlene Ponder. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this great kickoff series as we lead up to the Autism Out Loud documentary, which I'm excited to know that that's coming out soon. And tonight, we're going to be talking about access to services, safety, overcoming racist and ableist systems, highlighting systemic barriers, and advocating for improved accessibility. So, we're going to be talking a lot about experiences in the healthcare system, and as I tell you more about me, you'll understand why I'm also going to weave in experiences in the criminal justice carceral system as well, because there's so much violence done there to our Black people, particularly our Black disabled people. So again, I'm Carlene. I'm an attorney and an activist. And I started doing work at the intersection of the criminal system, criminal legal system, and just traditional in the streets activism from a personal level. The community that I live in, which is multiracial community, it is politically liberal, highly educated. People tend to have high income jobs, but nonetheless. We are subject, meaning Black people are still disproportionately subject to police violence here, as we are anywhere else. And so there was a gentleman with multiple disabilities in my community who was shot and killed several years ago in a routine encounter with police that just never should have happened. There was no crime. Um, the man was simply being who he was. And walking down the street, and that sparked a concern from a police officer who just happened to be in the neighborhood. He thought he was acting oddly, weird, that kind of thing. So you had the disability prejudice, which intersected with what I think was the first reason for the stop, which was his Blackness. So when those two things came together, Mr. Robert White ended up being shot multiple times and died as a result of that. And so that was the birth of my activism around that intersection of disability policing and the larger criminal legal system. And from there, I wanted to take this work and to make it mainstream, meaning something that the larger or the established, disability rights organizations would make a prominent feature of their organizations, their public policy goals, and their work. And so I ended up working for a national organization that focused on intellectual and developmental disabilities and really started their first interest and works around crisis response, meaning how we respond to people who are having, emotional, mental, behavioral health, whatever it is, crisis, and who happen to have disabilities. And, it was a hard road to trudge. I just found that it was more difficult to get people to understand why this was an issue and why it was a disability rights issue. And to me, I was shocked by it. I just thought, are you kidding me? Why is this so hard to understand? And then from there, I started the Autism Justice Center um, to really highlight that intersection of the work around policing and the criminal legal system, like as a whole, as it relates to autistic people. But you can't do justice work without centering Black autistic people. So that had to be front and center. But as a whole, autistic people disproportionately interact with police, are disproportionately in the criminal justice system, and are disproportionately sentenced to prison terms. And it's something that just doesn't get spoken about much. And access to service, lack of access to services, we can go all the way back to elementary school, is a key part of how that pipeline continues. And so I identify as a person with a disability. I have chronic fatigue syndrome, so an invisible disability. I also identify with having a cognitive disability because at times, because with chronic fatigue syndrome, brain fog is a big part of what happens. And so I always think of, myself when I'm having a particular episode and how difficult it would be for me as an attorney to even communicate, if I were stopped by police or something like that, because I just wouldn't have the capacity necessarily to do that. And so the burden really is placed upon people with disabilities to have a certain composure and certain ability to interact in high stress situations that is prejudicial and can be fatal. So I'm a Black woman. I wear glasses. I recently cut off my hair, so I have very short hair, like a little fro now. I also identify as a fat person, which I think is fine because there's a stigma around that as well. And I don't know if I told you I wear glasses, but I have earrings on tonight. I'm wearing a white blouse that has like peach and green coloring in it. So that's a little bit about me. As we move on to introduce our wonderful panelists, I want to start by saying we are sending healing thoughts and prayers to Jackie Pilgrim, who is unable to be with us tonight. Jackie has a health emergency, and so we want to wish her a speedy recovery. So we have two wonderful panelists in Enid Gaddis. Enid is a licensed professional counselor in the state of Michigan. She holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from Grand Valley State University and a master's degree in counseling from Spring Arbor University. Enid currently serves as the Director of Equity and Inclusion at a nonprofit mental health organization in Grand Rapids, Michigan, that provides mental health and substance abuse treatment and other case management, independent living, and family development services. She has also held a direct care role of mental health clinician, clinical supervisor, and program manager serving youth, adults, children, and families in community and home-based settings. Enid is also the author of the Black Male blog, which shares lesser known Black history facts, news, and information. We also have Janelle Johnson with us. And Janelle is an equity and inclusion strategist. She's president of NCA-MFT, which is a neurodiversity researcher, PhD candidate, I should say. And do I need to correct anything there, Janelle? Got it okay?
I'm past president of the NCAMFT, which is North Carolina Association for Marriage and Family Therapy. And yes, I am a doctoral candidate and neurodiversity researcher at NC State University.
And you're a licensed marriage and family therapist. Yep. A wife, mother, and the founder of Bridges Family Life Center, a neurodiversity affirming family therapy and consulting practice near Raleigh, North Carolina. Janelle's an award-winning mental health leader and neurodiversity advocate with lived experience. Her pioneering methods for serving underrepresented families led to her election as the first Black president of the North Carolina Association for Marriage and Family Therapy in 2020. Her writing on neurodiversity and disability is featured as one of 30 international thought leaders of mental health in a 2024 Oxford University Press anthology titled Anti-Blackness and the Stories of Authentic Allies, Lived Experiences in the Fight Against Institutionalized Racism. Mrs. Johnson is now a doctoral candidate at North Carolina State University, where her research focuses on neurodiversity affirming approaches to institutional policy and practice change in higher education and healthcare. Using the power of personal stories to connect, Mrs. Johnson delivers engaging equity and inclusion training, consulting, and speaking for leaders internationally. In her free time, you'll find her eating delicious food, hiking with her family, and watching Korean dramas. So those are our wonderful panelists tonight. We're going to kick it off with a broad question, and I'm going to leave this up to both of you to decide who wants to start first, and you can just kind of jump in back and forth. But our first question is, what are some services that are less accessible to Black autistic individuals because of racism and ableism?
I can jump in. Very happy to be here. So the list is miles long, in my opinion. I'll start from my vantage point. As a clinician, I think access to diagnostic services is limited. I think oftentimes we can be misdiagnosed or diagnoses can be delayed, particularly in children. Sometimes they're routed into disciplines pathways within school systems, which gives them the wrong types of labels. Oftentimes they may need need access to special education or other supportive services that they may be denied or looked over because of the unaddressed behavior issues that are created within the environment because their needs are not fully recognized. There is a lack of access or support, not a lack of access, but lack of support of parent advocacy. Often parents' requests for help or assistance are flat out denied or overlooked, particularly if behavior issues have started to surface and the child is now the problem. So I've seen that a lot in my work. Many folks that are autistic, particularly in our BIPOC communities, also have poverty as part of their narrative, which means many of them are Medicaid eligible. The reimbursement rates for Medicaid services are abysmally low. Therefore, many providers will not take Medicaid, or there's a limited amount of providers, which limits access to choice. So even so, that may force someone to select a provider simply because of proximity or insurance coverage. They're denied choice, even though they may have a Medicaid card that says all these people take their insurance. Many times their access to quality health care is severely limited. You combine that with issues of race and racism and lack of culturally competent providers from the schoolhouse to medical and mental health facilities, as well as what you talked about so eloquently in the carceral justice system. Many times folks can be routed into the justice system, and even there's not a recognition of their mental health and other healthcare needs. So I think there are many ways that systems fail them, and sometimes unintentionally because of stigma around mental health in the Black community. We as caregivers, friends, and family can also fail our loved ones too when we don't understand the supports that are necessary to support these individuals, whether they're children or adults. So I got a whole list, but I'll stop there. Maybe Janelle wants to chime in.
Oh, you hit the nail on the head with all the things. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be a part of this conversation. I'll introduce myself visually as well. So I'm a Black woman with brown skin, um, wearing cat eye glasses, which I love, that are black and gold. And you can't really see it, but my hair is in two-strand twists pulled back in a ponytail. And I'm wearing a green dress with all kinds of patterned colors on it that's blue, white, and yellow. Um, so yes, I agree 100% with Enid and even with what Carlene just shared beforehand. Um, the places that Black autistic people run into challenges with accessibility. Um, is there a place where we don't run into challenges? Is the better question, I think,
Yes.
because there is, we are hard pressed to find a space where um, we are not running into accessibility issues or discrimination issues. So places that folks run into challenges are their schools and their universities, their doctors' offices, their therapists' offices, parks, going to the park, churches and religious institutions. So, the list can go on and on where folks that my own family and folks that I work with as a therapist and as a researcher. These are the places where people are running into issues in accessing the space or accessing the services or being included, um, all of those things. I wanted to go back and make sure that everybody knew what ableism is. Sometimes we skip over that because we know what ableism is. We talk about it a lot, but some people that are new to disability, they have never heard the word ableism. So ableism is systemic discrimination against disabled people in favor of non-disabled people. And I really, really love attorney Talila Lewis's definition that she made in Community with um, Black and Brown advocates. And they added this really important point: you do not have to be disabled to experience ableism. I thought that was like bomb. Of course, leave it to Black and Brown disabled people to be able to connect those dots, because we know what it is to live at the intersection of race and disability. We know that a lot of other isms are kind of fueled by ableism as this kind of silent partner in the business deal that's funding and fueling all the other discrimination that's layered on top of it. So that's how racism and ableism kind of come together as wonder twins attacking us in different places, and us not really knowing which part is the problem. Is it the fact that we are Black? Is it the fact that we are autistic? Is it the fact that we're disabled? Is it the fact that whatever our other intersections are, we may be women or femme or queer, or we may be low income or whatever. We're just kind of stuck in the middle as multiply marginalized people, not knowing exactly what it is that has triggered other folks to treat us wrongly, but nonetheless, we're experiencing the inaccessibility and the discrimination.
And you both said some things I want to touch on. Janelle, you just talked about, I didn't know Talia Lewis's definition included, not being disabled, is you can still experience ableism even if you're not disabled. And that's great, and kind of ties into what I want to say, because Enid, you had talked about sort of access to services in the schools. And I can just tell you, I have like dear friends and family members who are at wit's end trying to get services for their autistic children in the schools. And sort of like you had alluded to, the child becomes a problem at some point for the school system, and then they decide they don't want to. They don't want to provide the services. So can we talk a little bit more about what that looks like? And for for Black children, the statistics, Black children in general, but Black children with disabilities, and then when you drill down to Black autistic children, the statistics have been horrendous in terms of school suspensions, expulsions, and placements in schools that are segregated, essentially, for behavioral issues.
I think the education piece, you are so correct. And let me go back. I apologize. I didn't describe myself. So let me do that for everyone. Again, my name is Enid. I am wearing a black shirt. I have my hair pulled up into a bun. I'm wearing glasses and some wooden earrings. So that's me. I'm sorry, I didn't describe myself earlier. I think that the education piece goes all the way back to daycare and preschool. The expulsion rates of children of color, particularly Black boys, is so disparate when it comes to their white counterparts as students. And like Janelle said, it's hard to know what ism or what aspect of their identity um, is being attacked. I think some of it is teachers and educators being under-resourced and not educated. We're not trained on cultural competency or understanding the unique needs of these children or their families. I've seen situations in my own practice where even the behavior of parents has been pathologized in trying to advocate for their children, right? They're labeled as aggressive, as mean, as belligerent. And so the whole family can become a problem, as you said. So I think that is, I just wanted to go back and add that piece. It just doesn't start in first and second grade. It starts all the way when you think about daycare, preschool, Head Start, in those institutions. And then another place that I think it shows up that we haven't touched on yet is the workplace. The workplace is also a system and a structure that can do a lot of harm to folks who actually have a lot of creativity and a lot to offer in the workplace, but they can face discrimination there too, even with the degrees, even with the credentials. They that is not necessarily a deterrent for them not experiencing being othered or experiencing ableism, being victimized by ableism in the workplace as well.
Yeah.
Definitely. The with regards to school specifically, a lot of the work that I've been doing the last 4 years has been with Black autistic families navigating schools. I've been a graduate research assistant in the FACES lab at NC State under the direction of Dr. Jamie Pearson, who created the FACES lab to study advocacy interventions for caregivers of Black autistic children. So we see in our work, we have seen consistently how specifically Black families that are trying to understand what autism is and trying to get support have been denied, delayed, dismissed, belittled, lied to, straight up lied to, told that they can't get an IEP, for instance, when that's not the law. All kinds of things are happening. And we know that for Black families in particular, that the intersection of race and disability comes together where white families are having challenges, but they're having less challenges or different, less intense challenges with navigating special education than us or their Black peers. And also the types of diagnoses that are assigned, right? So even with my own family, my child started receiving services when he was 18 months old. And so we had done a ton of preliminary work before we even got to school. And so when he got to school, he didn't have any behavioral issues to the point where they needed to be documented as goals on his IEP. But 3 years later, it was the pandemic, and he was facing some serious challenges with trying to learn on the computer, and started having meltdowns, multiple meltdowns a day again. And we hadn't been at that place in years. And so, as his parents, we advocated for him to have a different schedule, and we were told that he couldn't have a different schedule and that he needed to have behavioral goals on his IEP. Um, my child hasn't had behavioral goals on his IEP ever. Why are you telling me that my child needs IEP goals, behavior goals for his IEP all of a sudden? Um, so I ended up having to go to the school board, and a lot happened. That special education teacher ended up getting fired, and probably not just because of me. I'm sure there were other parents that had complaints too, but I was a part of the I was the part of the loud crowd. So those are the kinds of things that happen. We see it all the time where people are treated differently because in part to the fact that they are Black. They're treated differently in special education.
And you went through great extremes with, having to go to the board and knowing how to do that and being able to get an audience with the board. And, again, that's a burden that we're placing on our parents, right? To be able to do that, to expect that they can take the time off work if they're working. Maybe they're caregivers to other children, and they can't disproportionately spend so much time, advocating for one child in a certain space. And so, but if we don't, if that the parents don't, then what happens to those services? Access to those services? I mean, who else will do it? So it's a terrible burden and I also want to bring this up because access to services, the church came up and some of the other institutions, but I definitely heard church. And I wanted to talk about like access to services for our autistic children in our Black spaces. Um, and church certainly would be one of those. I mean, I've certainly seen some examples of Black-led organizations, community organizations that are well known, but who shy away from having autistic children participate in some of the social activities that they lead. So can you two talk to any experiences that way?
Yeah, I would love to speak to that. One of the hats I wear is being a pastor's wife. And so I think the church community, we definitely have some opportunities to educate ourselves so that we can support all children. And I think sometimes, yes, I can definitely acknowledge that, especially in smaller spaces, resources are limited. However, when you improve the environment for the children that have the most need, the rising tide lifts all boats. It improves the environment for all children. So I don't think it's as much of a sacrifice. I think that we have some opportunities to educate those. Oftentimes, you're working with unpaid volunteers, and they do need to be educated on how children might learn, engage, and socialize um, differently. So it is more of a partnership with parents. It is adapting activities. It is having just basic understanding of sensory needs. Like to a child that's autistic, we might walk into church and hear the music bumping, and we're like, oh man, they might be like, oh no,
Mhm.
right? So having a space where they can maybe go where there's less sensory activation, being able to have extra support if you have children's church activities, thinking about activities that you're doing, and just having a good partnership with parents because church or Sunday school can feel like school too, right? Where they're constantly being sent back, can't participate. It can feel like a repetition of other systems that they try to navigate that are not designed. And I think it also kind of hooks up to the lack of sometimes availability of early diagnosis, because sometimes parents may not even know that their children have this diagnosis, but they're struggling they're struggling in environments where if there was diagnosis and access to treatment, there would be more, there would be more supports available. And so I would challenge those in different faith communities, and not everybody's faith community is a church, to educate volunteers on adults and children, right? Because there's not just children that can struggle in these environments or feel kind of othered or ostracized. It's adults. One of the things that I've been um, reflecting on too is what is the experience of folks that are elderly, right? And how they are entreated or understood in social environments. So yeah, I think as the church community, there's lots of education and support that needs to go on there, because the pendulum swings so many different ways. There's folks who want to jump in, and then there's folks that are like, oh no, it might not be safe for them, like to go outside with everybody else. Like, no, it's not, we just need to understand how to support them and make sure all of our activities are um, accessible. So I think there's real opportunities in faith communities to support all children, and not single. Well, we've got to, you go over here and then you're isolated in a room with other children. That's not the answer either. Children need to feel included and part of, and we need to help develop the social skills of other children to support and include them as well. So it's not just the adults in the room that are supporting them. They feel supported by their peers as well.
And that's great. Now, Janelle, did you want to add anything to that?
I agree 100%. The one of the challenges that we don't necessarily talk about a whole lot, but it is there, is the combination of faith and our understanding of faith and our understanding of the Bible. If you're talking about a Christian church, and how that presents when we talk about something like autism or disability. And so there's a lot of education that needs to happen for sure. I agree with Enid 100%. Also helping families to understand that there's other ways of exploring what disability is and what it means and how it's presented in the Bible. I really love the work of Dr. Lamar Hardwick, the autism pastor, Black autistic man, and brilliant theologian who's doing some excellent work in this area. The Faces Lab has also done some cool work in partnership with churches and Faith in Faces Project. There's work being done to help us understand how to better support people where they are, meet them where they are. Folks that have autistic children, even if they are undiagnosed, those Black families, they're showing up at church, and they see church as the place that they can find community and find support. What if that's not the case for them because folks are not educated, or folks are struggling to make sense of how to best support autistic people in their churches? There's lots of work that needs to be done for sure.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you for sharing that resource too. And I know we're going to share resources at the end as part of the webinar, but that's great. And then I wanted to get into a topic that I spoke briefly about at the beginning, which is um, essentially crisis response, safety concerns when accessing care for autistic individuals, for the activist work that I've done around, unfortunately, too often around fatalities involving Black autistic people who've come in contact with a police officer, but generally due to some healthcare need, oftentimes a mental health care need. ends up being the reason for a person to lose their lives. Um, I mean, safety, we can talk about safety in so many different forms, but in a lot of the unfortunate cases or situations that have come about, it is oftentimes family members who are seeking services. I mean, they're really seeking services, and they pick up the phone and they call either 911, or sometimes they will call a crisis response line that is supposedly separate from 911, but police still end up getting involved. But these are parents who need some services at that moment, or grandparents, for a crisis that's happening with their autistic, child, teenager, young adult. They're not calling and asking for a SWAT response, but sometimes they get that. I mean, there have been SWAT responses. And so I want to sort of shift and talk about what are some of the safety concerns when accessing care for autistic individuals.
Um, I would say in my work with the agencies that I've worked with, I think the cultural intelligence or cultural responsiveness or even cultural humility of the law enforcement community needs to be upgraded. I know there's some work to educate on mental health for first responders in our area. Oftentimes in our area, depending on the type of crisis it is often the fire department that is responding first, and then the police. But however the first responder layout looks like, I think making sure those people have an understanding of mental health. But that's where the different layers of isms come into. They may see a larger Black man in a bigger body. And so all of these other threat responses are going off in their head. They may have even been told that the person has a disability or is struggling, but they're still responding to the bias that resides within them. And that's often what takes over, um, even when they have accurate information. So I think it's incumbent upon us um, within the law enforcement different units in our community. But I think it also depends on if that person is connected to an agency, because sometimes there's crisis response as being um, launched from agencies, right? Caseworkers, case managers, or things are going on in the medical office or in the therapy office. And I know one of the things we're doing where I work at is looking at ways to minimize police intervention, to have appropriate crisis response support for therapists, all the way up to the folks at the front desk that may not have any training in mental health. Like, how can we minimize police contact? We need to use all of our resources to make sure our response is compassionate and appropriate, so that we don't see law enforcement as the first call. Now, I know sometimes families in their homes have different, they don't have as many options, but I think some of these things are being modeled within systems too, when they feel folks are agitated or upset or they feel threatened. That is just simply many times folks not being comfortable or not being educated about how to support folks. So I think that there's lots of opportunities to do better education and have more conversations um, with law enforcement, and then have some serious conversations with families about, unfortunately, we cannot guarantee that when you call the police that help is arriving. So some folks may we need to balance their need for support with a really accurate understanding. Like, law enforcement has I've been told by various law enforcement folks that their goal is community safety, period. And so if in their minds an individual poses a threat to the community or to them, that is what is paramount. And so I think we need to understand the role that they play is very specific. I'm not saying that some officers aren't partners in the community. I believe that we do have some that are, but we need to understand when we're invoking the presence of law enforcement, we are losing certain aspects of control because when they do come on scene, they are now directing traffic. And that means you just wanted them to help your loved one calm down so you could get them to the hospital. They could decide that your loved one needs to go to jail first and let, let the county sort out what kind of mental health challenges, how to support them. So invoking the presence of law enforcement is sometimes not as always as helpful as we might expect. And some of the cases that you mentioned and Juliet mentioned are evidence of that. People who maybe thought that they were calling the police to get support, and it turned out to have a very tragic end.
Yeah, yeah, it's terrible. I know Neely Latson is one of the attendees tonight, and thankfully Neely is with us. But one of my favorite people in the world. But Neely had a horrible incident with police in Virginia that really stems from a person, a neighbor, I assume a white person calling the police to report that suspicious big black body that person thought didn't belong where it was. And so in Neely's case, and this is all public, in his case, autism was used against him. His disabilities were used against him in a court. They otherized him for essentially being autistic, being who he was, for responding the way that he responds to stressful situations. He was otherized and he was penalized for that in our criminal court system. So, and Janelle, do you have any experiences you'd like to share, or any recommendations for anybody who's concerned about safety issues?
Sure. I will add that first of all, everything that you and Enid have shared, yes, spot on. Definitely, police involvement is and needs to be the absolute last resort, the absolute last. With that being said, I like to talk with folks about prevention. There's a lot of stuff that happens before police, a whole lot of stuff. And so, what is your safety plan? You know that you are a Black autistic human walking around on the planet. You need a safety plan. You have to have a safety plan. And you need people around you. You need to do some good community building around you so that everyone knows what their role is in your safety plan. People need to be able to practice this safety plan. Like, these are the things that I work on with families when they come to me, starting from when their children are 2, 3, 4 years old, and then you evolve the plan as you age. Because I'm an autistic human. I don't know if I shared that earlier, but I still have challenges, right? And so, for instance, I went to Denver last month and I ended up having a pretty bad meltdown in the Denver airport. But I have a plan. I have this little kit that I have. I go, when I travel, I wear my sunflower lanyard with my card that lets people know that I'm an autistic human. I have my husband on speed dial, my mom on speed dial. I notify them when I leave that I'm going to the airport. A lot of times I travel with someone, but if I'm not traveling with someone, everyone knows what to do. And so then you prevent getting to the point where things are so bad that police have to be called. So that's part of it. Another part of it is managing the fact that autistic people experience significantly more trauma.
Yeah.
And that trauma is happening, according to the research, that trauma is happening at the hands of their caregivers and their family members, their community members. So a lot of times the triggers for what leads people to not be able to be safe or be at ease in their own homes or in their schools or in their churches, all these places that we're saying, leaves them no other place but to just be outside, be alone, be experiencing an event where they are overwhelmed and at risk of being seen by police in that state. See what I mean?
Mhm.
So there's these other things that we need to address about our different spaces and the people who are supporting us as autistic humans, so that we can prevent these kinds of situations from getting to the place where we're having folks that get arrested, that go to jail, or unfortunately lose their lives.
So
I
let's
think
talk.
that is,
Oh,
can I
go
say
ahead.
one more thing about
No,
that? That
please.
is
Yeah.
such a powerful statement. I think that that is where sometimes also ableism can rear its head, because sometimes if folks are outside, if they are walking or stimming or doing something that somebody else is like labeling as abnormal, or sees it as them trying to retreat, it might actually be a behavior that they're trying to use to invoke a need for help, or to try to keep themselves safe. And I really appreciate what you said about the trauma, because to experience the trauma is one thing, but to be unable, or, people label you as unqualified to advocate for yourself, right? If you fit into certain categories, and it's like, no, then your voice is totally dismissed. And then unless you're a caregiver or your therapist or the nice white lady next door advocates for you, your voice is silenced. And I have seen that with a lot of clients. When the issues involve them, they're talked about around them, or they're talked over, or you know what I mean? So even their own voice is, oftentimes there's an attempt to silence their voice, and even being allowed to advocate for themselves. They're not believed as truthful. Sometimes they aren't even asked. People show up on the scene and talk to everybody but them about about their behavior. And then we wonder why sometimes those situations escalate. It's because people feel cornered or trapped, and they don't know what to do.
And so, which leads me into this question, which is, so how can caregivers be better equipped to handle a crisis? And you both kind of touched on it, but let's talk about, like, what does that really look like for members of the family? A grandmother, for example, or, a mother, anybody who's serving as or, caregivers, I guess, if you're using care out in the community, what does it mean for them to be better equipped to help if there is a meltdown, or if there is repetitive behavior or stimming behavior, and or a behavior that could be considered that could be considered concerning. You're doing something with the microwave, for example, because you're obsessed, with the microwave. Like what? Enid, you're muted.
I'm sorry. I was going to say we can humanize caregivers, because sometimes they feel unsafe, right? Sometimes they may be feeling unsafe about the behaviors that they're trying to help manage. I think the opportunity to have support, whether it's a support group, whether it's their own therapist or community, being a caregiver can be really challenging. It can be stressful, although many times it's a labor of love. If you're overstressed and under supported, you might engage in some behaviors that you might not ordinarily do. To Janelle's point, sometimes caregivers are carrying out abusive behaviors towards those that they care for, because they're stressed out and they don't have the proper support. So I think caregivers need a support community. They need to be educated on things like Janelle said, safety plans. They need a community, and they need a village too. And sometimes those can be some of those institutions that we just talked about, church, um, other community settings or organizations, or just family members that can provide support. I think sometimes there's a lack of support when it comes to having a village So many times it's one, two, or a few people who don't feel equipped, always feel as equipped as they would like to be. And they have their own struggles with health and mental health. And when you combine that with being a caregiver, sometimes it can be overwhelming.
Definitely, definitely. I had at the top of this, I had community care as the answer. So I was going to say a lot of the same things. Um, Caregivers and autistic individuals, particularly autistic adults, um, it's important for us to focus on community care. That's the way. That's the way that we get it done. And community care has a lot of pieces, so it can be friends and family and stuff like that. It can be people at church. It can be some of these folks that are at our doctor's offices or schools. Inevitably you run into people that they just get it. It'll just be like 2 or 3 people. The whole school could be a mess, but like 2 or 3 teachers just really get it for some reason. You got to find those people, find the people who really understand it. Also, building disability and neurodiversity identity, really sitting in the idea that it's okay to be disabled, that it's okay to be neurodivergent, and that there are strengths and benefits to it, and there are challenges just like any other identity. And so, if you sit in building identity, then you can build community around that identity. There are tons of neurodivergent humans on the planet, about 20%. So, being around other people who are like you in the same way that we figured out how to survive as Black humans in the US, it's the same type of thing when you talk about disability and neurodivergence. There is culture there and there is community there that is waiting for you. And that is another place, one of the best places, to be honest, according to what we see in the research for autistic people. One of the best ways that we get support internally and externally is from our peers, is from other autistic and neurodivergent people.
Thank you both. Like this conversation has been so engaging. I think we have some really good questions from the attendees, and I want to make sure we have plenty of time to get to those. But before we switch over to the Q&A, you've both mentioned resources that would be, I think, helpful for our audience. So if you could just take a few seconds and think about resources that you'd like to share, we will make sure that they get out to everybody. But if you have any offhand that you want to mention, that'd be great. Could be for caregivers, could be for autistic people themselves, could be around safety, could be around school, could be around healthcare.
Some Not knowing all of the communities that folks are from, I think it's good to search within your community for different resources that are available that are local to your communities. There's organizations like this one, Autism in Black, offers a lot of education and resources through their website. Someone had mentioned in the Q&A about safety plans. Autism Speaks has some forms for safety planning to help you develop a safety plan. It talks about working with neighbors, alerting the school, public or social situations. I can drop those links in the chat. And then if your loved one is also maybe dealing with other health challenges or disabilities, like for adults, maybe like in Michigan and where I'm at, it's disability advocates that are available in different counties. There's an area agency on aging. If the person that you're supporting happens to be a senior, there's multiple agencies that can support folks that may be autistic or um, have other disabilities as well.
And Janelle, did you have any resources you wanted to share?
Yes, I agree. I think it's important to think a little bit more broadly and think about what disability resources there are. There's lots of organizations that support disabled people and their families, including, the um, Autism Self Advocacy Network, or your um, the ARC, or these larger organizations that really have great resources. Thinking about who you can reach out to locally, sometimes it's really good to just throw out a question to your network, go on social media, hey, I'm looking for this, or hey, I'm interested in that. Word of mouth is almost always the best way to find good support, particularly if it's targeted, like you're looking for a dentist that does great work with autistic children, for instance. Um, Also, there is a really cool hotline of the child help is what it's called, and it's a child abuse prevention hotline that people can call. So if you feel like you are feeling overwhelmed, or um, at your wits' end, and you want to make sure that you are getting the support that you need so that you don't engage in any kind of behavior that is harmful to the person that you are caring for, that's what the child help line is for. And it has a call line and a text line. I'll drop that in the chat. I think that that's really important as well. We're thinking about providing support for caregivers.
And do you think it's safe for families to call that number? Do you think it's confidential? And
Yes, it's built to be confidential, especially I have had great success with guiding families to use it for texting specifically. But yes, it's been around for a long time. It's maybe 30 years, 40 years. It's been around a long time. But it's one of those things that a lot of people don't know about, which makes sense that a lot of people don't know about it, given what it is. But it is there, and it's a great resource.
Well, thank you both. I am going to now hand it back over to Charlotte, and she's going to present some of the questions from the audience.
See me? Because I cannot see myself.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to run through some questions. If you still have questions, please put them in the Q&A box. Our first question is, what are some ways an autistic person who has low or no support system and higher support needs builds a support plan?
I think there could be a number of ways if they're functioning with a any sort of medical or mental health provider that they have a good relationship with, that is someone that can assist them in doing some safety planning. Disability advocacy groups can do that with you. So again, I'm in Kent County, so we have Disability Advocates of Kent County. I know there's similar forms of that organization in different regions within the state, and similar programs in other states as well. I think sometimes too, even if there's a trusted individual in a faith community or in a social circle, even asking them to help you with resources, it may seem a little odd, but one place that I have sent clients to that don't have as much community support is the library. The library will help you research anything. They will help you send an email, draft a letter. So the public libraries can be very welcoming spaces for people who just need to find out where to start or how to get going. They don't have to be there. They are multifaceted in terms of resources. And so someone could literally walk into a library and say, I need some help with doing that. There's computers there. Obviously, there's tons of books. That's a great place. And many libraries, public library systems do have outreach type services to help folks, not case management, but will help get them connected or research community resources.
Great. Our next question says, should Black or BIPOC autistic people learn self-defense and de-escalation techniques as well as coping mechanisms in order to handle stressful situations by themselves if they don't have support with them? I feel we still need to figure out ways to defend ourselves against police violence or any type of violence without always relying on supports.
I think that's a powerful statement, very powerful statement. I think that people that are autistic have agency, just like every person on this call. And it really is their choice to determine ways to keep themselves safe. For some people, self-defense or learning how to defend themselves could be a viable means of keeping themselves safe. And if that is what they feel would be helpful to them, they should be able to do that and not have being autistic or having a disability have people discourage them for fear that they're going to react in a certain way. So I think that is an individual decision that people need to make, that is a strategy to protect themselves, because we know that they can face physical threats of physical violence, but also the other things mentioned, coping strategies, ways to support themselves. Yes, we need to they should have the power to determine their future, what feels like help, what feels like support. And so I think having that agency to be able to do those things as they feel comfortable is totally within their rights. And they don't have to ask for permission. They don't have to ask us for permission. They shouldn't have to ask for permission or get it okay. They should just be able to be directed towards resources that can support them in learning those strategies in ways that are helpful. And maybe some of the folks that might be teaching some of those things, you might run into some ableism with those folks. And so being able to advocate for yourself if you don't feel that you're being given the sort of treatment and support that you need in trying to access those services could be an issue too.
Great. And we have one more, I guess it's a question and a comment. It says, as a high functioning autistic young Black woman, I forgot about the hidden disability sunflower card. So this has been a long time learning about it from a family member. I can ask my parents about getting one for traveling, ground or sky, airplane, or any other places, public places for the neurotypical world. Janelle, could you speak more about the sunflower card? Because I know like at our local airport at Detroit Metro, we have it there, but if there's one to get it like outside of an airport or like transit place, if you could share more about that, that would be great.
Sure. Yes, I got mine at my airport at Raleigh Durham International. So there's most airports, in a lot of airports in the US do have these. You can usually go to an information desk and ask for one. There's also a website that you can, I don't know the rep's website off the top of my head. It's probably Hidden Sunflower Project or something like that, that you can visit, and you can request that a sunflower lanyard and card are sent to you. So the movement started in Europe, but it is definitely an international movement. Lots of people know about it. It's definitely something that that I encourage folks to use, especially when they're out and about in public and using any kind of public transportation or flying or what have you.
Thank you. And then there were just other couple questions in the chat I wanted to bring up. The first one said, thank you for your presence. Is there a link to the recording from last week? Yes, I put it in the chat, but also if you follow us at hashtag Autistic Out Loud documentary on YouTube, I'll put that link in the chat again. We're live streaming to YouTube right now. So after we're done with the webinar, all of our sessions will be available on YouTube for you to share with your community. You will also get a recording of this session and any other sessions you sign up for. We also have thanks for faith communities, including churches, The education needs to be not just for how autism might present in children. There are many adults who never got a formal diagnosis or treatment, who are in faith communities and struggling with sensory challenges, learning differences, and their needs are overlooked, not centered, and not included. Would any of our panelists like to quickly speak to that or add anything on to that point?
I did type a response to that in the Q&A, but I agree wholeheartedly. There are many folks without formal diagnosis, and I think that if you're part of a faith community that maybe is affirming and supportive, but just not enough resources, maybe ask them, could they consider making that part of their outreach ministry to bring some folks in to educate. Sometimes we have not because we ask not. If you feel the community is supportive, they just need more options to educate themselves. I would say bring it up to your faith leaders, bring it up in your children's ministries, or just ask. You know, there are some ministries that do very well, and intentionally they're not advertising how they support people who learn differently or have autism because they want the space to be inclusive. So if you have questions, I would ask, how are youth leaders trained to support folks with autism or other disabilities? What supports do you have around, you know, sensory? Is there a room? Is there sensory spaces? Or if you are a person who is autistic, make some suggestions, like that conference room nobody goes in during service. Could that be a sensory room where the service is on a monitor but just lower? Could you save a few rows in the back so people don't have to go to the front and hear the music? Can the nurse, you know, are there sensory, you know, just so there's suggestions that you can make that those, you know, folks that maybe are in different types of bodies might not even consider, but might be willing to do to accommodate. So I think that's where some self-advocacy comes in too, is to make suggestion, ask for supports for yourself or your child, and maybe even talk about, are there other parents here that have children that are autistic? Could we get together and as a source of support, or make some suggestions on how the ministries could be more supportive? Are there adults with disabilities that, you know, I mean, just there's lots of things we can do to advocate and ask for more supports. So I would recommend that too.
And then just to touch on like ableism and worship, I just thought about this. But I was at a church service recently and they were just going on and on about, well, some people just can't take it in here because it's loud. It's too loud. And it was too loud for me. Let me tell you that. I
Yes,
said to
yes.
myself, I am never coming back here with something. It was loud. And they weren't thinking about it this way, but that is a form
It is.
of
Ableism,
ableism.
yeah. Yes,
But we
yes,
would
it is.
definitely have to do that for that type of education around that, and it would be up to the people who are in that worship community to do that. Because for me, I'm just not going back.
Right.
Um,
That's something that is important to point out, is to the point of the definition of ableism, right? You do not have to be disabled to
Right.
experience ableism.
Right.
The idea is in churches, but in all of our social systems. Um, that's why getting good education, getting good consulting is really important, because you may be causing folks to not come, causing folks to not participate, and not just neurodivergent people, because of the things that are happening in your space that are fueled by ableist ideals that invisibilize people. Thank you for bringing that point up.
I also think
Oh, you mute. Oh,
like
there you
if
go.
you if you know, if you're a part of the faith community, sometimes we can learn some things from what the rest of our community does, right? The movie theater offers sensory support. Like you can go to the movies occasionally and have the lights partially up and have the sound turned down. Are there ways that certain ministries could say, like, this is, you know, this service is designed to support um, different types of folks that might have sensory issues, or then just some of us who just don't like loud music? Are there ways we can adapt? And I think as a person that is in the equity and inclusion space, I think we do have to be mindful of our words, right? Because that could be othering somebody, like there's something wrong with me or I don't love God as much because I'm not enthralled by the loudness of the service, or we that is like, some people might internalize that, and we have to remember that folks that live with disabilities, right? We are experiencing 1,000 pricks a day. So it might not be the one thing that was said in church, but then I got to go to the grocery store, and then I got to go through the neighborhood, and then I got to go to the doctor's office. There's this multi-layered effect of places where I don't feel seen, I don't feel included. And so those things add up. It might not just be what happens in any one space, but that multiplier effects keeps us feeling like, wow, there's not a space that really honors the totality of who I am. And that's not a good feeling.
Thank you for all of your insights. We do have one question on YouTube for our moderator. This commenter asks, this question is for Carleen Ponder. Are you able to help me as a caregiver with my son's legal issues? I need assistance because he is being discriminated in the justice system and he is autistic.
So what I can do is point you to resources, particularly if I know where you are, like what state you're in.
Okay, I'm going to keep an eye on the YouTube chat, and we will try to connect this commenter with you if they leave anything else. But we had one more comment in the Q&A section, and someone was just saying that how sad is it when the police's personal's lack of emotional regulation skills and their dysregulation results in excessive force and the death of a Black autistic person?
Yes, that's exactly how I think about it. You have somebody who is perhaps emotionally unstable, maybe mentally unstable, and maybe motivated by all kinds of prejudice and hate, holding a gun with the authority to use that gun and the authority to take somebody's life. I think about Sonia Massey in Illinois. I'm from Chicago. And she was the one who was in her house, and she was hearing voices, and she had picked up a pot of water. And the responding police officer, who was talking fairly normally, with her for a few minutes, once she picked up the water, I mean, he just lost it and shot that woman in the head. It was an execution, because he could have gotten away from the water very easily, but you had somebody who couldn't regulate himself, right? He couldn't regulate his emotions, his response, his anger, his thinking. Uh, so, yeah, that's
Thank you.
exactly how I think about it.
And Carleen, this commenter that's on YouTube says that they are in Michigan.
Okay, let me think about, so if we can get some information, can they send some information via email?
Yes.
Okay. If we can get some information, then we can be in contact with resources in fact, resources in Michigan.
And then we have one more commenter before I pass it over to Tamika and Juliet. Hello, my name is Joy Jacobs, and I'm Xavier's auntie. Thank you for recognizing him on his heavenly birthday. And then Tamika and Juliet, I think I'm going to give it back over to you because you have some final resources for us and a couple of flyers put in the chat and just some closing words.
Yes. Before I do that, I just want to, thank my moderator, Carleen and Janelle and Edith again for having this great conversation. I learned so much, and more resources too. So I definitely will make sure it's shared to all the people who registered for the event. But before I get to resources and comments, Carleen, Edith, and Janelle, you can share, guess Carleen first, where people can find you to get in touch with your work.
I think the best place to find me is LinkedIn because I keep such a low social media profile.
Okay, it's LinkedIn. Okay, and Jadelle, where can people find you?
Sure. A couple of places. I am very active on LinkedIn, chronically so, to be honest. So that's probably the fastest way to reach me is on LinkedIn, at the Family Fanatic. I'm actually at the Family Fanatic on all of my socials, for LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. You can also contact my practice, Bridges Family Life Center, at bridgesflc.org, .com, sorry, /consulting, to be able to work with me as a consultant for your organization or a speaker or a trainer. Um, so those are the best ways, fastest ways to reach me.
All right, thank you, Enid. Where can people find you?
I just asked Charlotte to post my LinkedIn handle in the chat. That's probably a good, that's probably the best place to find me as well.
Okay. All right, thank you. And so I put some flyers in the chat. One is the Disability Democracy Community and Incorporated. And so that is a great group that's headed by Naita Green. And so it's like for policy. So all the issues, that we see that's going on, it's a great group of disabled advocates. And so they are having a bed in um, um, a bed in protest against the autism registry. Uh, uh, it's horrible. It has been things the autistic community. And so one of the things that he has said that he wanted to do a registry. He said he's going to find the cure of autism by September. So, so you can join uh, Anita and the group as far as their bed in protest. And then also during the day, I work for Michigan Disability Rights Coalition. And so part of what we do is we have leadership programs for for people, adults with developmental and intellectual disabilities. So in August, they are going to be conducting a cohort of adult advocates who are from the BIPOC community. And so if you are in Michigan, we only serve people in Michigan. So if you are a Michigan resident or know of someone in Michigan that's an adult with a disability or autistic in particular, I put the information in the chat as well. There are arts. They deal also serve people who are um, the IDD as well. Arc Detroit, I know the executive director there, Lord Glover. They're another great resource. He is, and he actually works with a judge in Detroit. Any cases that she sees that's dealing with people who have disabilities, she refers them to Lord. And so there is like a pipeline that we, created in Detroit. And so that's another resources and Centers for Independent Living. Every county has one as well. That's what he did. Indeed was speaking of. So there's, a lot of resources available. So, just, thank you. Like I said, it's a great discussion. And I'll follow up with more resources. And I'll give it to Juliet if you have any resources that you want to offer or comment.
I just want to comment. I think it's so important because, we know about the other resources that are out there. And I think that having this webinar is really important because we get to find out about our the resources that are there for us and ours. Like, they say it in all communities, but in the sickle cell community, we love to say nothing for us without us. And I think that that's what a lot of these other organizations do. They think that they have the answer and they can come in and help us, and then they get the little halo on their head. But really, it always goes wrong because they never reached out to us and really spoke to the community and what we need. And these type of webinars and forums are so important because I see, just from these two that we've done thus far, I've gotten so much feedback on how much people have learned. One of our audience members last week, ended up finding out more information about her EID for school, and uh, actually was able to go to I think a homeschooling conference, and had now had the dialogue and the conversation to have with someone else on how she could help her child. And so that's just in a week, it had already changed someone's life and trajectory. So I applaud the work that you guys are doing, and thank you so much for doing this webinar.
Yes, thank you. And Charlotte also has put the survey in the chat, so it's confidential. But definitely, we would love for you to fill it out, so so we can gauge and just know how helpful these webinars are. Also, we give an option if you want to share your story, because part of the documentary we have the four individuals that we are going to highlight their stories, but they're also some of the people that you've seen, in this webinar series will be also speaking and talking about their stories. So we do hear from the community, and so if you have, a story that you would like to share, you want to be part of it, please put that in the survey that you like to be part of it. Also, social impact. This is really the heart of why Julie and I, do produce films, and what to do with our media projects is to again to elevate the story. So, we want to know as the documentary is and what this webinar is, what do you hope to see that what tool, how can we use this documentary and webinar as a tool to, better empower the Black autistic community as well? So we definitely want to hear, your thought in that. So please indicate that in the survey, how you like us to use it. So, in closing, I want to thank you so much for joining us today for the hashtag Autistic Out Loud webinar. We hope you're leaving with not just information, but inspiration, motivation of the real stories, real voices, and real tools to move this work forward. Juliet and I created again this webinar series and documentary because we believe that Black autistic lives matter, Black disabled lives matter, and that our voices must be centered in the conversations, particularly when it comes to autism, um, disability and justice. And, we believe today that you witnessed that, what it means to be autistic out loud and, to speak truth to power, challenge the systems, and celebrate identity unapologetically. If today's conversation moved you, we encourage you to keep going. We will. Also, when you fill out the survey, let us know if you want to be, kept in the loop as the documentary progress. We still a little bit in a we call it pre-production stage of the documentary, but we will send out updates and such. So please share this webinar series. Continue to start conversations in your churches and whatever community you're from. And most importantly, let's continue to uplift the Black autistic voices in our everyday life. Again, huge thank you to our speakers, our team, and to each of you for showing up with open hearts and open minds. Your presence here help us build a more inclusive and just future, where no one is left behind. Be sure to follow us on social media, hashtag Autistic Out Loud on Instagram and YouTube, again for updates, recordings, and join us next week at 6 o'clock for we're going to talk about education and employment. So we have a great group of people. One is an actor, Nick Sanchez, and there's others as well that will be talking about their education and employment journey. So until next time, stay bold, stay loud, and stay rooted in justice. Thank you and take care.
Thank you.